Okay, now we'll get back online here. Okay, do we have anyone else with public comment?
Joe, I just wanted to know where we're standing on what I brought up at the last meeting concerning an alderman living out of his ward.
I've already put a contract on the house for your information, and as soon as I can, I'll get back in that ward.
I appreciate that. I don't appreciate the pointing the finger. I'm just curious on it, if you're going to, and how long of a time frame are we going to give him to live out? I mean, since February he's lived out of his ward, so how long are we going to give him?
Excuse me, I have not lived out my ward since February. That's where you're wrong. I stayed in Reeds for a while.
That's in your ward?
The insurance company told me to get out of the trailer. They cut me up in Reeds for 3.
Sir, I'm not a child. You don't need to scream at me. You can talk civil here, please. Now, say it again. Now, I couldn't understand your comment.
I said Reeds.
Yes.
It's public comment, right?
Well, I'm sorry, but this.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. We can't comment in public comment anymore.
Just like when you were in office.
I think what Rick said, he's put a contract on the house. I mean, his intent is to get back into his work. And I mean, it is a temporary residency because of the tree falling on the house.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, the intent is to go back in.
Well, if you want, you asked me to research this, Mayor, this Thursday afternoon. I got back, and I know former Alderman Dan had called. But there's the statute on this says, you know, a vacancy occurs in an office by reason of more than a temporary removal of residence. Okay? All right. I'm going to take a few minutes on this. I know we all had some heated discussion before, but I'm going to take a few minutes on this. I'll talk louder, Kathy, okay? Did you hear what I said before? Okay? A vacancy, here's the statute, okay? A vacancy occurs in an office by reason of more than a temporary removal of residence from that ward, okay? Now, there's 2 ways you can approach this, or there's 2 ways this could be approached. If somebody has an argument or they want to complain, they can file an action in court, okay? But this statute also goes on to say that the corporate authorities have the authority to determine whether a vacancy has occurred. So in other words, this council could determine that if the council wants to, and if it is put on the agenda, you know, then they could schedule a hearing, and there would be a hearing held on this, and then the council could decide, okay? Now, what I also want to do is I want to explain a couple of things here, okay? Ed, I know at the last meeting, Ed explained that the intent is one of the big things. What was the intent? What is the intent of an alderman or a candidate, whatever? All right? But, and you know, it goes without saying that an alderman must reside in the ward that he or she represents. All right? And as I said, a vacancy occurs if there's more than a temporary removal. Now you've asked me time. Well, how much time? Well, there is no time. There's no 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 100 days. I'm going to read you a couple excerpts, and you may be familiar with the court case that just came down. It's in the Supreme Court, or it just came down from the Supreme Court with Rahm Emanuel running for the governor, the mayor of Chicago. Okay, but I'll read you a couple excerpts out of there. And I haven't explained this to you, but a lot of the factors that the court considers, you know, or the boards consider, is the address on the automobile registration, utility subscriptions, receipt of mail, address on bank statements, change of address, credit card and other bills, employment paycheck stubs, tax returns, the amount of furniture that a person may have in a location, number of nights spent, telephone directory, magazine, newspaper subscriptions, personal business cards, voter registration. The reason I'm telling you all that is because it's not an exact thing, because it's based on what is the person's intent. Okay? Now, I'm going to read you a couple excerpts from this recent Supreme Court case. This had to do, there was a 150-year-old case that has been the law in the state of Illinois for 150 years. And the Supreme Court refers to that. But it said, in concluding that Smith's 8-month sojourn to Tennessee did not result in an abandonment of his established Illinois residency, this court explained that once established, residence is lost by a union of intentional and acts that, and that the intention in many cases will be inferred from the surrounding circumstances. Where a person leaves his residence and goes to another place, even if it be another state, with an intention to return to his former abode, or with only a conditional intention of acquiring a new residence, he does not lose his former residence so long as his intention remains conditional. Okay? Whether a candidate abandoned established residence is a question of intent, and an absence for months or even years, if all the while intended as a mere temporary absence for some temporary purpose to be followed by a resumption of the former residence, will not be an abandonment. Okay? The court went on to say, indeed, once a person has established residence, he or she can be physically absent for that residence for months or even years without having abandoned it. The shortest absence, if at the time intended as a permanent abandonment, is sufficient, although the party may soon afterwards change his intention, while on the other hand, in absence for months or even years, if all the while intended as mere temporary absence for some temporary purpose to be followed by a resumption of the former residence, will not be an abandonment. Okay? Stated differently, this is what the court said. Stated differently, a residence is not lost by temporary removal with intention to return, or even with conditional intention of acquiring a new residence. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is if the council wants to, the council could put it on the next agenda to set a hearing or whatever, and make a decision. But those are factors that the council would be considering. Okay? And as I said, it really depends on the intention and the permanent intention. A temporary residence or a temporary removal does not necessarily mean, that their vacancy occurs. I'm just telling you what the law is and what the case says. If you want to look at the case, I can, give you the case or whatever.
I just like that.
You asked me to look into it.
I'd like you to copy that, Jeff.
Sure.
But I would like to have the city council put on the agenda and have a hearing on it. Because if he did put a contract down, great. I hope he gets back into his ward. That'd be super. But I don't know what time frame. If it ain't February, I don't know when it was. The tree branch landed in February. I'm assuming that it wasn't inhabitable then. It's probably not habitable now. Whatever time frame that is, I don't know. But I just have a problem with an alderman that was attacking a former Alderman Cook about not living in his ward, and then he's doing the exact same thing now. If I remember, there's two things that man did when he campaigned. One, he said he attacked Dean Cook about it, about not living in his ward. The other thing, he said he's going to bring Obama down, and I don't think that's happened either. So I think we need to really start looking at our cleaning up our own house here. If we're going to be going after other folks like this, and he puts out a campaign like that, and he gets elected, and then he does, that's being a hypocrite. The second thing I want to bring up to the council on public comment here is the state his house is in. If you go down there, he actually owns 2 properties in his ward. Both places have high weeds of over 4 foot. There's, at that trailer, there's derelict vehicles in there, or derelict lawnmowers, broken down porch. And then that one is where the city actually had to get the state to swap ground, and we spent a lot of legal fees for that, so we can give him the ground. Remember that, Mr. Kirk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, down there on Taylor Street, Branch. And then that one has about 8 foot tall weeds and trees and, not trees, weeds and Johnson grass, which is illegal. I got pictures if you want to see it. So, I'm just saying, if you're going to be an alderman, and we're going out there and we're picking on folks having derelict properties and tearing down people's houses and so forth, and we have an alderman doing it, that just ain't right. We're going to make other people mow the grass and spray the weeds, so we need to have our own alderman do that as well. Because if we're being hypocrites for doing that, we're going to go out and tell people to do it. So that's one to address the council. Mr. Mayor, I would like to have that on the agenda for the next meeting to set that hearing, if you would.
with the clear.
Well, I think there's a lot of things, like Jeff said, there's a lot of things you gotta consider too. I mean, that whole list.
I'm just explaining to you what the law was, so.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, anything under old business?
Joe, I got a few things. I can pass this out. Status on the mudslides, have we got any assistance from FEMA?
That's actually being looked into. They're supposed to be coming. Mike was there with them. I think they're coming down Wednesday, Mike.
Yes. Good week.
And what about the letter to the governor for the National Guard assistance?
Yeah, actually, we're waiting to see what the FEMA guys say on
Have we spent any money on the mudslides at all?
that. No, we haven't spent anything other than what we've done on the riverfront and cleaning.
And then the parking along Sloan Street, what's the update on that? What are we gonna do?
Swallowing.
We're parking on one side.
There was a reason you couldn't,
We couldn't do that because of that,
the money that was spent.
because of the state money that it was already, because we filed for a variance on that paving for that street. So we couldn't go back and change the parking because of the variance, because that changes the center line of the road.
Okay, to prepare the curbs and sidewalks. Have we got a total number of feet that we can do with the money allotted? Last meeting, I think we had, what, 38,000? We thought of the number of feet correctly.
Will be done, Wednesday morning.
I think that's gonna be a square foot price and not running foot, because you get into, because you run into wider width on the main block up here. It's not gonna be 4 foot wide, it might be 7.
And then the subway building, what are we going to do about that?
We just
Is the
talked,
owners?
we just talked about that one.
I've just, David Barton's giving me the list, and I will send a letter to you.
Okay, the security locks, has the contractor been authorized to install the fifth lock?
We're having a meeting on tomorrow.
So all these items you're going to bring up, like the O&M manuals, or when the warranty starts, who's in charge of the security locks and systems? And the establish who's going to be in charge of that?
That's, we're having a meeting tomorrow on all that stuff.
And then the community service, the last report was for June 20th. Have we done anything since? And work? Is there any other work plan?
Harold?
Currently, there's 3 young people assigned for community service, and plans are for them to help this week with the Friends of the Library Trivia Night. And then I thought my plans would probably be to finish up those 3, and after that, I don't think I'm authorized to work with them. So they'll probably stay with Chief McKinney, I assume.
Is there any way we can cut the weeds from Route 3 to the bridge along the guardrail? Is that part of the community service or somebody else? Do we do that?
On the bridge road itself?
Yeah. On each side of the road?
I think that's state.
State does that?
It used to. Inmates used to cut all that.
That it belongs to the state.
And you're locked down.
Whether,
Now that Randy had a vest and.
but they still got road crews out, but there's only 2. And that's about 10 guys, maybe at the most. They used to have 4 or 5.
Yeah, Randy had a list that he presented to the board, and he
That guy
told me
really-
what he
Well,
did for us.
That guy retired yesterday, Mark, if that tells you anything. No, the ground supervisor. I could maybe check. Was that on there, Mike? Was that on there on the list? Bridge Road, what you're talking about, Bridge
No.
Road, Brad?